This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team MARTEK Hour, Joe MARTEK.
Hey, that be me. Welcome. Here we are, 19th of September. Is that possible, Dan?
You know it is.
It's the 18th, but go ahead.
I missed a week from all the hurricanes.
I'm telling you.
Everything sort of got jumbled up, and I had to go out of town for a while, and I'm thinking, I can't believe how late in the month it already is.
Yeah. Well, you know, that week I took and went over to Fort Myers to escape from the hurricane that I didn't need to escape from.
That was a wasted week, wasn't it? But it was important to get out of town. You never knew.
Hey, let me just tell you, if you lose a wife or a kid, that's not important, but having your boat sink. That's critical.
In your
stuff.
case, it would be losing an ex-wife.
It would be losing. Right. In his case, it'd be losing everything.
What is that?
Hey, that's this new phone.
It rings every time he makes an ex-wife joke. It rings to remind him of how much it cost him to do that joke.
Wait a minute. I just hit the sound button. Oh, mute. No, that doesn't work.
Well, while Joe is playing with his phone, I'm just going to say that you're listening to Team MARTEK, a wonderful team of people that help you in many different ways. We've got Joe MARTEK himself, who's a financial advisor. We've got a premier insurance agent who has over 100 companies in his stable, Dan Warren. We have Greg Fasula, a wonderful estate and trust attorney. We have Victoria Lloyd, a premier real estate agent with RE/MAX. And Victoria probably or maybe will be showing up here in just a few minutes. And we have a wonderful mortgage broker, Dan Warren. And that's I'm sorry, Mike Paulus. I already said Dan.
Yeah. Dan is a wonderful mortgage broker, but he doesn't ever get a commission.
I get no commission.
No.
All I do is refer it out. I refer it to Mike.
And that's what you do. You refer. You don't work together in the same office, but you refer people, and you've got over 200 years of experience between the five of you.
Between you and Joe alone.
Yeah. Not in hey, you realize with you, Alan, we have 300 years. Hey, speaking of Alan Love, he is a special guest member and has been for 3 or 4 or 5 years now. We're not really paying much attention. 4 years. But he is the retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin. And
Isn't it nice to get respect, Alan?
That's right.
And he still thinks
You know what?
there's actually sports teams in Wisconsin that anybody cares about.
The Badgers.
I ignore
The Badgers.
Badgers.
I ignore things that make no impact on people's lives, and that's why I ignore about 85% of what Joe MARTEK said.
Hey, speaking of which, I was talking to Cliff Desmond here today, who is the computer genius in the room hanging out here pretending he's working. If you go to WPSLTV.com, now Bulldog, do this for me. Mike, if you're listening, do this for me. Anybody that's a regular listener, do this for me as a favor. WPSLTV.com. Put in subscribe, cost you nothing, and then you can look at any one of our videos that we've done with our team members, which Dan and I are most of the time. It's the two of us, but there may be 100 shows recorded in there. I'd like you just to give me some feedback and tell me what you think of what YouTube does.
Oh, that could be dangerous.
That could be dangerous, Jim.
Well, you know, listen, when you give the feedback, don't do it live because I don't want you to cuss me out.
Only positive feedback.
Only
is what he
positive
meant.
feedback.
You know these poor guys who have to listen to the show in Los Angeles.
I'm telling you what.
They'll give you some
My
feedback.
Your
what?
regulatory guys are going to murder you.
My regular compliance guy out there, the one I had, he says, Joe, you're really upsetting me. And I said, why? What did I do? And he goes, You didn't do anything. That's the problem. You didn't talk business for 1 minute for the whole show, but I had to listen to the whole show.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a show where we can get feedback. Our listeners can call us right now and give us feedback or ask questions. The number is 772-340-1590.
So you're saying your compliance officer is actually our best listening audience member?
They should do the YouTube thing.
You have
I have
one
one in
listener.
California, right? 340-1590, 340-1590. We talk a little politics, you think?
Well, there's a lot of stuff, happening, and as we get closer and closer to, some real decisions made by the Democratic Party as to who's going to carry their banner into the next election, it's going to get heated up and more exciting and stuff. Yeah, it's
Well, I like where
pretty
they
interesting.
started.
My candidate got tossed out.
Well, that's only right.
Tulsi Gabbard.
I liked her. I thought
She is
was
the
tough.
sharpest
I
one.
liked her.
Well,
of
that's
the
why they
bunch.
tossed her
That's
out.
why they tossed her
the
out.
only one that made any sense in the whole
That's why they
group.
tossed her out.
Well, I love how they're going back after the Supreme Court justice again. And even-
That's a waste of their effort.
Well, you know what happens? Every time they do something like this, it's hurting them because now they're going back to high school again. I mean, high school.
He's not a nominee. He's a sitting
Yeah.
Supreme Court justice. You better come with your A game. I believe if he was a lesser person, like say somebody like me,
Yeah.
he'd have sued him. I'd sue
Yeah.
I'd sue him in a heartbeat. He's not going to sit through that at his level.
But he can't, though. He's a public person, public figure.
Well, can't you
Not-
sue for
this is-
libel or?
This
I don't
is-
think so.
This is
Not
they have
if you're a
crossed.
public
They've
person.
crossed the
Can't-
boundary. They've
Really?
crossed the boundary.
Uh-oh, wait a minute. We've got an
we have an
attorney
attorney
here.
sitting here, and you're saying?
You can't sue if you're a famous public person for libel or
He's not
slang.
a famous public person.
He is.
Kavanaugh is a famous public person. Now
Now,
maybe
what about these
maybe
actors?
2 years.
What about these actors that sue tabloids and win?
Well, that's
They
a
weren't
little
famous enough.
that's a little different because of the fact that if they are putting out falsehoods and you can prove it's a falsehood, then it's not something that you can't sue for because of the fact that you are.
But if you do a falsehood and you're a public figure, like a government figure, you can't sue?
No.
Isn't that exciting?
No.
Well, then you know what? Dueling should come back.
Dueling should come back.
in style.
And only load one gun.
Well, I'm just telling you, you should not have a right to say those things about me or my family
Well-
without a consequence. And I'm going to tell you, it's hard for me to say this, but as a man, I would not tolerate that.
Yeah.
I would find a way to come pay you a visit.
Your knee might be a little crooked.
I'm just telling you, you should not be able to do that.
340-1590, 340-1590.
But it's
Well, I
the New
just-
York Times.
Oh, yeah, New York Times.
So I roll up my club in a New York Times, so you get you get the impression.
Speaking of Medicare for everyone,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I
Let's get
love
off that subject, Joe.
I've been preaching this for a long time, but here's
At least 10 years.
at least.
You have.
But
you
here
have.
comes another opinion. This is my opinion. This is not the station. This is not Dan. This is not anybody
This
but
is
Joe.
your disclaimer.
This is because Dan was with me for a while, but he's starting to fade. So I'm gonna do this
But,
on my own.
but why am I starting to fade? And here's the reason: because from what I have heard, now once again, I don't have access to their books, but what I've heard from some higher level people in the medical profession in the hospitals, if they would go broke on the amount of money they get from Medicare, and if everybody got paid that, the hospitals are going to fail. So there has to be, if we're going to get Medicare for all, which is fine, then Medicare needs to pay a fair wage for the procedures that are done to keep our hospitals open. That's just my opinion.
Well, you see, I've heard this also from, remember back when Obamacare came in and doctors said they're all going to go out of business and not going to do, and not one left. More added.
That's not true, Joe. I know lots and lots of doctors that have gone into concierge practices and said, "You want me? This is what you got to pay."
But wouldn't the top of the line?
Is that not true, Alan? Do you not have one yourself?
Yes, I do.
There you go.
Wouldn't you think that the top of the line physicians, I mean, the guys that are the best, they go into the concierge, they would have anyway, don't you think?
No, because if they got paid enough, they wouldn't have to do that. They were forced into that. That's my opinion.
That's your opinion. My thing is this. I'm trying to do some research to find out what it would really cost for Medicare for everybody. You know, it's really is. All these politicians that preach about it, the numbers get thrown out, but nobody has an objective study showing what it is. So the best I could find was that today, Medicare pays between $9,000 and $10,000 per inmate, which means all of us over 65, per year. That's what it costs them average. Some states are more, some states are less, but it's $9,000 to $10,000 per person on Medicare. So you're looking $800 or $900 a month that Medicare is spending on each one of its members. Now,
Even if you don't go to the doctor, that's the
that's
average.
the average. Well, here comes the problem with that number. The average person is over 65, one. That's the highest health care group going, number two. Number three, those that are under 65 that get Medicare are in extreme health problems because they qualified for Medicare disability. These are very expensive people, very expensive people. A 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, etc., isn't going to cost as much. And when you look at how Medicare, another one of the arguments I hear against Medicare for All is you put insurance companies out of business. Well, I don't think so. What happens today, Dan, if I have Medicare, I can get a supplement through an insurance company to pick up what Medicare doesn't pay.
The 20% that it doesn't pay, or the deductible.
And the A deductible, which is hospital. Or I can go to an HMO or a PPO
and not have that.
And what happens is Medicare then pays, let's say Humana, eight
But
or
you have
nine-
to go to their program.
To their program.
They're approved doctors. You can't go out of network or not get slapped for extra money.
Yeah, well, like I went in, I'm on a PPO, and I went in for my.
So you have your own docs.
That's right.
Well, yeah, but then
And most of them are on
Yeah,
most
those
of 'em
programs.
there's tons of them on. No,
Not like an HMO.
No.
but the PPO cost me no premium. Zippo. It takes $135 out of my Social
Because I
Security.
know you used to go to a veterinarian that
I
was
know,
on your
but the
HMO.
vet was even cheaper.
That's right.
He was good.
That's called
He
a
was-
V.
he was
That's
good.
a VMO.
And he'd say, "Listen, I gave you this Coumadin will kill you, but don't take that much."
That's right. Look at the rates.
kills- Look what it does to the
It's
rats.
It's rat poison, you know. So, and that shot that I used to put your dog down, I can give you that, make you feel good, but don't take as much. Anyway,
You
forgive
sleep-
all that
You
part.
sleep well.
Sleep well. Well, ask Michael Jackson.
That's
you know.
right.
So what happens is, when I went in and got my skin cancer taken off my chest, it cost me $35. That's
not bad.
yeah, well, no, because I'm not in.
He's not in the network.
Not in. But this is the closest dermatology facility I can find to where I live or work. So 35.
So here's how you got to think. All right, we have all the elderly now on Medicare,
right.
and it's a drain on the system. But we've been paying in theory for decades.
Yes.
So it's not like all of a sudden we're 65 and we get it. We've been paying for a product in hope that we'll live to be 65, that we may get it.
Collect it.
But
right.
what Joe mentioned over 10 years ago was you raise the Medicare monthlies
Right.
from working people, and the same with Social Security, and that should offset.
However, I even got a better idea.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Value-added
Should I
tax.
hold on to my wallet?
Well, I did
I
another-
like the VAT tax.
Another study that half of the money the government raises every year is via income tax. The other half is via every other kind of tax. Now, you know, we have a value-added
And I
tax.
pay both.
Huh?
I pay every other tax and income tax.
Yeah, you do. But you know what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of people that pay no income tax, but they do pay part of that extra 50%. The bottom 50% of the people pay 3% of the taxes in America.
Income
Right.
tax.
Income tax. But that same person at the bottom, when he goes and gets a gallon of gas, he's paying some tax.
Of course.
Oh, now, I don't know if you have a federal tax in your electric bill, but I know you've got it in your gas station. But whatever the other taxes that are hidden that most
Look
of
at
us
your
don't.
phone. Look at your cell phone bill. You want to see some taxes?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
all I'm trying to say is, and the thing I like about value-added tax is that everybody, the people that are working under the table, people that are not on the table, people
all
that are
participate.
illegals,
They all
everybody
participate.
is now contributing to the system.
But here's what scares me, Joe. So I agree with the VAT tax. I think it's a better way than taxing me on what I earn.
Right.
And if I'm a productive member of society, probably around October, November, I'm thinking, hey, I'm paying 50% of what I earned to good old Uncle Sugar. Maybe I shouldn't be so productive right for the rest of the year. That should never be the case. The government should always encourage you to be as productive as you can. So the only person who would pay more is the one who buys more on a VAT tax.
Yeah.
And
So-
you could even give those on the lower end of the economy some kind of prebate, and we
Well,
talked about that before,
of
to
course.
help offset some of that.
Well, the key is this: like right today, food is not taxed, drugs are not taxed, herbs and vitamins are not taxed. Everything else in the grocery store is taxed. So if you buy a shirt or whatever it might be, you're going to pay tax. There's nothing wrong with
It's
leaving
not
the
an
sys-
essential.
Yeah, leave the system like it is, because everybody has to buy stuff. But you know, poor people are going to eat lots of rice and beans.
But when you say the food is not taxed and the pharmaceuticals are not taxed, that's really not true. All right, it's not taxed to the consumer, but everybody who brings it, every step of the process to the consumer
from the
is
producers
taxed.
to the
So if we really
distributors,
wanted to have
truckers.
tax-free food and tax-free medicine, no part of that process from the inception to the actual consumer buying it, and none of that should be taxed.
Yeah, well,
That'd
now-
be tax-free.
Now you're using logic, but
Well,
then we'd
I
have
apologize for that.
Yeah. Then you'd have to start raising the VAT tax on other stuff to pick up the slack for this hidden stuff that nobody knows about.
Well, then you have the other added problem. You talk about the VAT tax. What about what California did with the gas taxes? I mean, what is it, an extra
Don't
$1
you love
and a half or
California?
$2 on?
Did you see that? You know, with one of the Democrats wants to give everybody $500. I think that's Elizabeth Warren.
No, that was
No, no.
Yang,
Yeah,
a
it was
thousand
Yang.
bucks.
That was
$1,000 bucks.
A
No,
thousand.
But also they wanted to give everybody under a certain level of income $500
Oh.
a
For
month,
what?
just for showing up being alive. Everybody. Government would give you
Like an allowance.
Yeah, an allowance, $500.
Kind of like what I get.
A month?
Kind of like what you
An
get.
allowance,
right?
yeah.
But
You
you
don't
get it by
get. You
the-
don't,
for the
only
year.
you don't get that much.
It would be $500 a year, maybe.
I know.
500 a year.
Well, what happened was it was kind of interesting. They did this TV show that I watched on it, and they showed some of the Silicon Valley people in California who are making too much money were feeling guilty. So they decided to do this out of pocket. So they contributed, and they started, and they showed this lady, which I love this one. I love this one, where she was getting $500 a month. And they interviewed her and said, "What do you think about that?" She goes, "Oh, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Now I can take my dog to the vet, and I can spoil my grandkids." And they said, and by the way, she's looking for a job. And I thought,
Well, how about this?
as
Jim?
soon as her unemployment runs out, she'll go get a job, and she'll still keep getting her 500.
And I'm not trying to get too off track, but I'm going to for a little bit. All right. So if you're a very wealthy person and you're not tithing 10% to your church,
Right.
that's the first place you should think about redistributing
Wealth
your
redistribution.
money. Give it as you're supposed to, not on the gross. I mean, not on the net, but on the gross. You're supposed to do that. So let's do that. And now, if you still feel guilty about making too much money, there's all kinds of things you can do. But there's a lot of people who struggle. And, you know, struggling isn't necessarily a bad thing. When you struggle, you appreciate what you have. You appreciate your accomplishments. But no one should go hungry, and no one should go without. We're a generous country. What happens sometimes,
We are?
Joe? Yes, we are.
Oh, billions of dollars are given to charities.
I
every
think
year.
what
Billions.
happens is the people who take advantage of the system,
Of course.
we get a bad taste in our mouth and think everybody who's on these programs is taking advantage, and that's not true
Well, you and I.
So how do you explain the major homeless problem we have?
because people can't afford houses.
Well, here comes another problem. Is not all of those homeless are, let's say, homeless because of mental or physical problems. There are a few alcoholics or druggies on the street,
That's true.
and I know, and you know, and we all know, and in fact, I've given a few of them $5 every now and then because they're addicts and they are out of the system. And they're addicts and they still need to eat until they die. But the key thing is this. When you have full employment, Greg, full employment, and you got 60,000 people hanging out in L.A. not working, full employment, everybody you know and I know that wants a job today, oh, I'm not going to go work for $10 an hour. That's beneath my dignity. What's wrong with you? I mean, we all, listen, when I
If
started
you work
working.
hard, Joe, at $10 an hour, within a short period of time,
You'll
your
get-
boss will give you a raise.
You'll get a raise.
And he will make. But here's the thing: if you live in California, You can't buy a house on $10 an
No,
hour.
no.
You can't even hardly buy a tent on $10
You
an
can't.
hour.
No, you can't live in California at $10 an hour.
So what you have is the working people who still need help. Now, is that the state's fault, or listen, I have no problem being my brother's keeper.
Is it
all right?
society's
But I
problem?
want my brother to be participating
There you
and
go.
taking care of himself also.
So the guy that's laying on the street in the tent, and that's, understand, if he's not a druggie or an alcoholic, and they are destitute because of circumstances, it's hard to get a job if you don't have an address. It's hard to get a job if you don't have a phone number. I mean, when you go fill out an application, if they can't find a way to call you to say come in to work, it's a bit of a problem. On the other hand, the government will give you a free cell phone if you're below the poverty limit, and they'll pay the bill. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there that's available to people.
So do you think that, sort of like with our friend Bulldog, who's trying to be an advocate
Right.
for the veterans, do you think that we need to be more involved with looking out for our brother and our sister who are in need to try to help them to these programs?
Here, my problem is the ones that I know that are on the street here, St. Lucie County, Martin County, that live in the woods, most of these are alcoholics, drug addicted, something, they dropped out of society, they're living a day-by-day life.
Off the grid, shall we
Off
say.
the grid.
Off the grid, yeah.
Yeah, it's really off the grid. And I know some of these people that are snowbirds. I mean, they'll travel north in the summer and they'll come back down in the winter, and they'll panhandle both ways. It becomes a way of life. But Dan, you and I were raised working class people. I mean, we didn't. My dad was a milkman in Detroit. When I was working for $1 an hour pumping gas, when the old man wouldn't pay me for carrying milk around.
Now
So-
you're getting $1.50.
no, $1.50. It's big money.
Well, Joe, you mentioned Bulldog, so it's a good time for me to just say that Bulldog is a veteran of the United States military. He served our country honorably and well, and now he wants to educate other veterans. And Bulldog is recovering from cancer in his mouth. And so he's not talking on the show, but he is accepting emails from veterans who want to be educated and find out what's out there. And so I'm going to give you Bulldog's email. It's Robert Buys, B-U-Y-S, 1004 at Comcast.net. Robert Buys, B-U-Y-S, 1004 at Comcast.net.
Yeah, Bulldog is going through a terrible situation with tongue cancer, and hey, either he'll make it or he won't. But the bottom line is what he's doing is tons of research with the VA, what the VA benefits are, so that he has going through and done a lot of the work that can help other vets, and he is more than willing and happy to help other vets.
And these benefits are earned.
Yeah, they are earned benefits.
They're not just something that they
No.
give. You earn these things. So, listen, I know, like with my father-in-law, Gil, before he passed away, all right, he always thought to himself, I'm a pretty blessed guy. I had a good job. I had got a good pension. I'm never going to use anything from my VA benefits that he earned for being in the Marines for all those years. But over time, it became apparent that he needed to tap that resource also for medication and stuff. So, if you're out there and you're thinking, there's a brother in arms who needs it more than I do, and you're eligible for some of these things, don't not get them.
No, absolutely.
Try to get them for yourself because
You've
it
earned
helps
it.
you and your family.
By the way, speaking of the VA, nice job throwing the congressman out of their office at the VA hospital in West Palm Beach. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I don't
What
think-
is it? It was Brian Mask
It
asking
was.
a
It
few
was Mask.
little sensitive questions in there,
Yes.
or what?
Yes.
So they tossed him out.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
Well, it's only right.
God.
Was he paying rent? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. I don't know.
I have
All
no
I- hey,
idea.
Did he have a lease?
340-1590, 340-1590. Hey, again, I want to favor anybody that's listening. Go on WPSLTV.com, WPSLTV.com, then hit subscribe. That gets you YouTube for free. watch some of our old videos and give us some criticism, especially the ones that Dan's on.
The
because,
critique, not the criticism.
Okay, critique. I like
That's
that. It's
right.
constructive
Criticism.
Destructive Wait a minute.
That's for
Forget that
Joseph.
part. That's for Alan, right?
Boy, you are so nice.
You're welcome.
My old news directors, you say, it's just a critique, you idiot. Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I have another, sir?
It's the postscript that hurts. It wasn't right. Hey, speaking of Miss Victoria Lloyd, who
I
called and said
lost
she was
my
going to
bet.
be here earlier, but I guess that shower took too long, huh?
No, I wasn't even in the shower, but I was on my way. But then you get calls, and then you
get
got to
sidetracked.
talk to the clients, and then you got to pull up property, and I'm here.
Hey, speaking of which, they had it on the CNBC today that August housing starts were 12% higher than they expected. They had a monster housing start last month.
I know they're building a lot of houses, Joe. When
You know,
I'm
I don't know if
out
you-
and
if
about,
you-
I see a bunch of
If
them.
you see it much here, Vic, but you can't use any one neighborhood as a criteria. But have you seen much new construction going on?
Yes, there is a lot of new construction going on. Yeah, and the prices are a lot higher still than what we have in resales going on right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But a lot of people like that word new.
Hey.
So doesn't make any difference where they put them up at or where they're at, and they
Well, if you
put
can
a sign out.
if you can afford it, and you want brand new, there you go. You know,
Yes.
hey, we used to sell brand new all the time, but the key is this: the rule of life is if the market is correct, new costs more than old.
Yes, and people, they don't always understand that,
Yeah.
when they're but it is lovely. Like, we'll put a shout out to Michael because we closed on his lot, and he's building this spectacular castle home. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable, and it's going to be a commodity that you couldn't find out there. The things that
he
he's
can
putting
afford it.
into it.
It's a
He
custom
can.
home.
It is a custom home.
Yeah.
And in many cases, some of our older homes are built exceptionally well. Back when you didn't have these track builders building them just to move them.
Yeah.
Some of these homes are really nice. Some of these older homes, well built.
Well, they are. And the nice thing about them also is all the upgrades that you've always wanted to put into them are already into them. And a lot of people don't understand that when you get this new home, you might not get blinds and the ceiling fans and your washer and dryer and all these little perks that you're going to get into a resale situation.
Well, the whole concept is, though, that, and we were just talking before you came in, that the economy is humming along at a very good pace right now. Interest rates are at an all-time low still. I mean, you're under 4% for
They're
fixed
incredibly
mortgage.
low.
Incredibly low. Back when I was in real estate and Victoria and I were working projects, and we had some 16 and 17 and 18% years. And we used to-
1987.
That's
we used to say,
stagflation.
boy, if we ever get 10% mortgages again, we'll be rich.
Well, look at when we were going up. We stayed flat for so many years. And I remember in 1987, we were the first in the nation for growth in St. Lucie County. And we dropped, and Houston, Texas took over. And we kind of, even the projects we did, we built out these big developments, they stayed flatlined for many years.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then those all of a sudden just boomed up.
Yep.
So it is incredible.
340-1590, 340-1590. And speaking of, I'm guessing a faithful listener, if it's not Mike Paulus, it's our buddy Mike. It's Joe Martek. You're on the radio.
Hey,
How you doing, my man?
what's happening? Fort Pierce is a brand new, beautiful Dairy Queen south of town, and there's some kind of a construction near Johnny's Corner at Rio Mar going on the east side of US 1. So those are good to see.
Yeah, another Dollar Tree.
Is that what
Probably.
it is? I don't know.
You think that's what it is?
There was a
Nobody can
PDQ
tell
going
me. I
up.
wondered if Miss
PDQ?
Victoria
There was a
might-
PDQ, and they're down south. It's a chicken place.
That's
So-
the PDQ, and I was growing up was a convenience store. Pretty darn
Was it?
quick.
Pretty darn quick.
Well, I find that most people tend to do what they want to do, and people who want to work and prosper and gather money do that. When I ran the labor hall for 9 years, most of those people didn't want to participate in the real American pie. They chose their lifestyle, were happy to live under a bridge, didn't want to go to facilities because they couldn't drink and smoke their pot.
Yeah.
So they were happy. I find most people find a way to be happy. It seems to be a human tendency. Remember what Jesus said, the poor will always be with us.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to say that same thing, Mike. Thank you for being eloquent, because that was much better than the way I phrased it. But the bottom
Absolutely
line
better than the way you phrased it.
Well, thanks, Dan. First of all, I said, Mike, I sat here right next to Dan and set him up so he could jump on me. But I got 2 other people that are trying to bring out their club right now because they're agreeing with you. Anyway, but I've often said I envy anybody who is content. And, and the word content, like you said, there are people that live under the bridges and they're content.
Well, there's one thing being content, and I have had conversations with people and friends who have what I would consider issues, such as drug issues or other things that they are abusing themselves.
Right.
And they would have told me, I'm happy living the way I live.
Leave me alone.
All right, leave me alone.
Right?
All right. And I can live with that. But when the bad times come or the bad health comes or whatever, they have a tendency to blame society for not having the things that they need at that time to get them through that time. You can't have it both ways.
And
can't have it both
my
ways.
friends that got sick who didn't have any way out of it are dead now. The infection or whatever it was took them down, whereas those of us who worked, put together a life, can avail ourselves of the things that are out there to keep ourselves going.
There you go.
So you make those choices.
But you don't want people to feel like they're helpless and don't have any choices and that they do have some control. The goal is to make people feel that there is opportunity out there. You have to go out and look for it. And society, by and large, wants you to succeed. We do not want you not to succeed. We want you to succeed.
Look at America. I mean, that's what we were built on. That's our whole concept here. Free enterprise, capitalism.
And I keep hearing America has the most vibrant, healthy economy on earth right now.
Yep.
So why mess with anything? That's how I feel.
Well, no, what happens is, Mike, when it's too good, we're making too much, so we got to start giving it away.
There you go.
Well, I think what we're hearing is those at the top are too vibrant, and those at the bottom are not vibrating at all, and there has to be a better way to get them involved with the system. But if they choose not to be involved, we can't force them.
Well, one of the new programs going is they want to start taxing charities. I love
what?
this. Well,
There's a movement to tax churches.
I've heard that too. Lose their tax.
I mean, the whole.
But if they do that, can they now preach politics from the pulpit?
Yeah, there you go. And some do already anyway.
Well, I was going to say, now wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back to when Johnson was running and he got that one pastor in Texas who
I
got
remember.
on him.
Yeah.
All right, so that ever since then they've been pushing that separation of church and state. It's not really clearly defined within the Constitution, so they went after him on a tax basis, if you recall.
Well, the happiest thing is I'm not worrying about hurricanes now. I truly believe we've reached the Rubicon and crossed it, and I think we're going to be okay.
Hopefully
That's
we're on the
what
downward
could do in my
slope.
life.
I've seen him hit in November, brother. So
Hey, we all.
We all have.
Yeah.
Think positive.
Think
I gotta
po-
go. Great
Bye.
talking
Bye,
with
Mike.
you.
Mike,
Bye-bye.
thanks for calling in. 340-1590, 340-1590. Remember that, WPSLTV.com, YouTube, subscribe, feedback I'm looking for. Vic, a lot of our shows are recorded on YouTube.
Yes, I know.
So what happens is I want somebody to just watch them and see what they think. How hard is it to actually watch it?
do you watch them, Joe?
No.
I
All right,
haven't seen
so
it.
I want you to watch them
I'm
too.
in them.
Okay,
I
here's
mean, you think I want to watch myself?
Well,
Now,
yeah,
wait
you
a
might
minute.
learn
Do you
something.
watch
I might
NCIS?
learn something.
Do you watch NCIS or do you watch Joe Martek?
Yeah,
Let me see.
NCIS, that was easy. Hey, you know what I did watch on PBS? The country music thing that's going on, a documentary on country music that went all the way back to pre-Depression days. What a magnificent documentary.
Like the Woody Guthrie area?
Yeah,
Or
well, yesterday ended up with Hank Williams.
Junior?
No, senior.
Okay.
And what he contributed, and the fact that he died at 29 years of age, and his life. But it was just a magnificent documentary. And it's on public TV, WXEL, whatever it's called. And
Excel, yeah.
I watched it by mistake, and then I
By
got into it
mistake.
because now it's a series where they're going all the way back.
That's the famous documentarian who did baseball.
Ken Burns.
Ken Burns.
Yeah, way to go! What a
Yeah,
hey, look at you
yeah.
guys, geniuses sitting here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. But we just got back from Nashville, Lenny and I. We went for our wedding anniversary.
Did you sing?
No, I did not sing. But it's so interesting. You've got to go to where, and I'll tell you a really great thing about Elvis Presley.
Is that country music up there?
That's where Dollywood is.
That's
No.
in
Oh.
Gatlinburg.
That's in Sevierville.
But you know, when
Well,
people
yeah,
say
it's
country,
weird.
I want jazz.
yeah, but they have jazz also, and we went to Skulls.
That's New Orleans.
Skulls
Oh, I
has
know.
jazz. That's where we went for our
Bourbon
anniversary. It's called
Street.
Skulls. And he died because he used to put all his money in his vest. He owned Skulls, and his name was Skulls. And he used to put money in his vest, and then somebody came along and attacked him and killed him to steal his money out
Took
of his
his money
vest.
out of his vest.
Yeah, and that's how he died.
I don't carry any money.
So if he'd have put it in his rear end, they would have just tipped off one cheek.
Yeah, but he didn't believe in banks, so he put all the money inside of his coat.
I've got a line, but I'll never
I know,
use
I
it.
know. We all have lots of lines we can throw in there.
Yeah.
What's it, your hip
Well,
pocket?
yeah, I'm on it like a hip pocket, but I don't have all that money in there, so don't come and take it from me. But Elvis Presley, when he did "Are You Lonesome Tonight," he had just gotten out of the service,
Yeah.
and Elvis always liked the lighting. The lighting was the most important to him in the studio, and he said, "Turn all the lights off, and I'll sing it." And it was like early, like 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. He was doing it, and at the end, he didn't see the mic, and his head hit it, and he heard a clunk. And nobody knows that, but that's his head hitting the microphone when
Is
you
it still
listen
on-
to
it's still on the
Yeah,
song?
they
They
couldn't cut
recorded it that way?
Yeah, they did, because back then to take something like that out would have taken forever.
Oh,
And they
brother.
but nobody's ever heard it. But now that we know it's there, and you listen to it right
Clunk,
at the
clunk.
end,
Yeah, just like that.
Hey, my first video I ever did of homes, and I was doing videos in 1987 of homes. I was way, beyond people, and I had the
You
big.
were beyond
Well,
people.
people that
was
wanted
ahead
to
of
do
her
video,
time.
ahead of my times. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. So that's called a Victoriaism, my husband says.
There we go.
So I had the big camera on my shoulder, and I'm doing a video of this condo. And as everybody says, I talk too much. I didn't say a word. And I'm videotaping, and I'm finally getting to the end, and you hear clunk, and I walked right into the wall. I had a black eye from this videotape.
I was with you on one of those occasions, but it isn't quite the same story.
No, that was a different
That's a
night.
different story.
That was exciting.
She
night,
picked
though.
up this guy in a bar
didn't
and went
pick
out
him
to
up.
Sailfish Point, and here we are in this beautiful penthouse apartment, and it's 2,000 square foot balcony, and Victoria says, "Oh yeah, well, are you married?" And he goes, "Yes." And she turns around to leave, and she ran smash into the.
Couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Well,
to the-
we were at a chamber event, and he came to me and asked me to come over, and I said, no, but I'm with a lot of people. He said, well, bring them all over, and you guys went with me. But he never mentioned he was married at the time.
Anyway, she put a nice
Can
note.
we,
She
can
goes,
we
she goes,
leave
boy, your
Di-
windows are
can-
clean. And he goes, you don't clean your windows at your house?
Can we leave Dynasty and get back on track, please?
Another subject you will
Well, that
not
was
hear
part
on
of
the
real
afternoon
estate.
show.
That was part of real
I
estate.
thought this was General Hospital or
That-
all my children.
Not
that-
yet.
but that was
Another
part of
10
real
years
estate,
it will
Joe.
be. Seriously, 2.5 hours from now, the Fed may or may not do something.
What are they going to do, Alan?
I'm saying they're lowering by a quarter point.
That's what the absolute majority think is going to happen.
So it probably
Now,
won't
what do you think
happen.
if they don't? You think Trump will put a contract out on the Fed president?
I think Trump will go ape about how
I-
the lower rates by a quarter.
But how's that going to affect our bond market? We already have that in that
Well, the
inverted
bonds
curve
have
you were
already
talking about.
the bonds have already priced that in.
Yeah, they actually
They
the
anticipate
10-year has
that?
gone up. Yeah, they're back into the right level. They're
Right.
they're not into an inversion anymore. So,
Right.
and all of a sudden now people are not as concerned about this inverted bond market. That used to be a panic, and it was each time, but it's gone and done this now a half a dozen times so far in the last 8 months, 10 months, whatever.
So it used to be a precursor to a depression or a recession, right?
Well,
The
they-
inverted curve?
Right.
Is
Yeah,
that what
the
they
inverted
call it?
yield
Yeah.
curve. What they said is this: every time we've had a recession, the yield curve inverted. However, every time we have an inverted yield curve, we do not get a recession. So now, and remember, like Obama said, the new normal. Well, let's face it, things are different today. There's no way we can compare things in the past with technology and speed and communications the way it is today.
And look at
compared-
the debt we have, though, too, as a result of that.
only 22 trillion.
That's nothing. If
$85,000 a person, not a big deal.
if our dollar becomes worth less and less, then the debt looks smaller.
Well, you see, that's what Trump wants. Our interest rate goes down if we bring down the interest rate, so we look better.
So if we let
Makes perfect sense, right, Greg?
if we let people in and they can pay $85,000
That's when you go home and you
per
say,
person,
"Honey,
we'll
I
pay
got
our
a
debt off."
decut,
That's right.
a decrease in my pay, so now we don't have to spend as much."
Yeah.
340-1590, 340-1590.
But you know who gets hurt the worse than that? Are the elderly who have saved money religiously, little bit, all their life, expecting that money to be worth something when they retire, and now the dollar that they saved is worth a nickel in buying power.
Now they have to start talking to an investment advisor who shows.
You know one?
Do
you know anybody?
Coincidentally, just
Joe, you have the perfect product to help older people, and it's the variable annuity.
what happens is I'm supposed to say with my compliance people immediately, you have to know the claims paying ability of the insurance company. But basically what the variable does is says you can be in the market. Like right now, you could be up as much as 18-20% so far this year if you were in the S&P 500 and or the NASDAQ 100, and many of my clients are. But people say, well, Joe, the market doesn't always go up. What if when it goes down? Well, the insurance company comes in and says, here's what we're going to do. If you qualify, and the way you qualify by it is not being 104 years old. You got to be under 80 normally to get into these things. They say, we're going to guarantee you a 5% income on whatever you start with for life. And some of the companies, every 3 months, will step it up if the market goes up. So let's say you started with 100,000, and you're going to get 5,000 a year. But then every 3 months it goes up, and let's say 3 months later it goes to 150. It won't, but let's just use that as an example. That's easy math. 5% on 150 is 7,500 a year. Then it goes down to 50,000 because of a crash the next quarter. You stay at that high number for the rest of your life. It can never go down. It can only go up. And they do the same thing with the death benefit, saying, hey, in case you die on the wrong day and you're worried about your wife or your children inheriting money, we protect it with the insurance the same way, highest quarterly or 5% a year. So, yes, I've got a lot of people today that are in this because they need income on a monthly basis. And you go to the bank, you get your 1 or 2.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. And you might get a 6-year CD paying 2.
Yeah, you will.
But, you know, and that probably is going to go down pretty soon because if the Fed lowers interest rates again another quarter, we're going to be back down. So it pays people to do a little investigation. However,
Joe, let me ask you this. Now, you indicated that, you know, this product is good for people primarily under the age of 80.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we live here in God's waiting room. There's a lot of people 80
Joe
and
and I
plus.
are there.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. Alan, too. I hate to tell you.
What kind of product do you think might work for that?
Well, you see, here comes different things. There's exchange-traded debt instruments paying 5 and 6%. It's not insured, but they have major companies, utilities, et cetera, that have these things that are paying a regular quarterly dividend or interest paying 5 and 6%. Now, and I have a lot of people back again. They need that income.
How long do I have to be in that to
You
get
don't.
paid?
They're 100% liquid. Buy it today, sell it tomorrow.
What if I want to get the dividend? How long do I have to be in that product?
Sometimes only a month, and you collect
wow.
3 months. Like right now, today, speaking of REITs, R-E-I-T, Real Estate Investment Trust, this week, the end of this week, you own these things, and you're going to get paid next month 3 months' worth of interest, dividend. And you're going to get 3% next month for being in for 1 month. Now, this is like being Catholic, Greg. Don't ask questions, you just are one, you know, because it doesn't mean to make logic.
So you got to be there at the right time to take advantage.
You got to
of it.
be in there at the right time. But there's also a bit of a negative for getting in just in this last month because normally the price of the shares goes up.
In anticipation.
In
of the dividend.
anticipation. So a lot of people buy just before. Well, then right after it's too late, the share prices come down. So if you're looking long term, I normally suggest to people, hey, it doesn't make any difference when you buy. But if you're looking short term, you might want to not take this one dividend and wait for a dip for the price to come down. Last year, we had some people that made 15 and 20% in 1 quarter because of the share price. Hasn't happened since.
So you buy it on the low side.
Yeah, buy it on the low. And then I put in a limit now at 10%. So I say, don't get greedy. If it hits 10% up in 1 3-month period, take the 10, start over again, or take the money and run, do whatever you want. But there are different vehicles available for people. What you have to look at is the amount of risk. And my job, first thing in the world, is to say, what's your risk tolerance, and what's your goal? So when I look at somebody immediately, I say, okay, you've got X amount of dollars. What do you want to do with it? Well, I went down to see a young woman a couple weeks ago, And she said $20,000, and I said, what do you want to do with that? She goes, well, I'm going to buy a house. And I said, when? She goes, well, next 6 months or so. And I said, leave it in the bank. You don't want to invest that money, because if you make a mistake and that 20 goes down to 18 or 15,
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Now, it could go up, but there's no guarantee. So you can't, in my not too humble opinion, short-term money is over 1 year.
Absolutely.
Over 1 year. Short-term money, leave it in the bank if it's a year or less. And then even those over a year, most of the times I like people to say, I need it for a long term, I need it to protect my family, I'm looking 5 or 10 years, I'm looking what if I don't die. Then it's more logical.
Well, if I put my money in the bank, let's say in a CD, there's really no fee to me other than the low return I get.
Yeah.
That's the fee.
That's the fee.
All right, versus a better return, and you get a small fee.
Well, what happens is when you look at the things that are the exchange-traded debt instruments or the REITs, I get a commission up front.
You don't work for free?
You're kidding. It's really hard to do when you're not a philanthropist, you know. I tried to get Victoria to loan me
Wait a minute,
$100,000, and she wouldn't even return my
people
call.
pay you?
Can you imagine that?
Wow.
I know, it's scary.
And you're not even selling milk.
Yeah, but you know what? I will. I throw in a quart of milk for if you put in 100,000.
That's illegal.
You can't even get a tip.
I can't get a tip. The key thing that happens is I charge a commission on these things up front, but I charge nothing when you sell. So you pay one time. So if you're in it for 4 or 5 years, you pay next to nothing to get in. Sometimes you can hire somebody that says, hey, I'm better than him. I don't charge a commission, but I'll charge you 1 or 2% every year. Well, guess
Over time, it adds up.
over 5 or 10 years, all of a sudden you're at 10 and 20%. Rather than one time. So you have to weigh which way is the best for you to go. But bottom line is, when a person has money and they want short term, I discourage them for investing it. I encourage people long term.
Well, that makes the most sense. But you also have to weigh on their age, like you said, the age and their risk tolerance,
Yep.
and what they want the money for.
Like I've got a couple right now that are pushing 90 years old that are in an assisted living. They're paying $6,000 a month. Well, they need to have a pretty substantial amount of money coming in the door. They're not overly concerned about how risky it is because they need to pay the bill.
Sure.
So
You mean they're not looking long term?
They are looking long term. You know, what if they don't die between now and 100? It's a big problem. So you know, it's hey, this.
And people are living to 105.
Yeah,
we
they
just
are.
lost somebody that was 105.
Yeah.
You know, I read the obits every day because it's embarrassing when you lose a client and you call them up and they say he's dead. You know, so you need to know ahead of time. What really upsets me, Greg, you might try to do this. Half the people that are dying every week are younger than you and me.
Yeah, well, I've seen that. Yeah.
That's true.
A couple of them are younger than Dan.
Well, hey, listen, you know, the sad thing is I've gotten to a point in my life where I have actually attended funerals of kids I coached in Little League.
Isn't that sad?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Now, most of those things are either
Wow.
accidents or
Drugs.
overdoses and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a sad, sad day when we live that long to see that.
340-1590, 340-1590. Okay, any faithful listeners, remember this, WPSLTV.com. Then you can see our YouTube videos. You hit subscribe, doesn't cost you a nickel. You can watch any video anytime. They're all there. WPSLTV.com. We'll see if
And
any.
today's show will be up by tomorrow afternoon, definitely.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Our purveyor of the show left us already, though.
No, he's here.
He's here?
He's working out
He's
some other
hiding
stuff
up
in
there
the back.
trying to find
Yeah.
a new hip, is he?
Yeah, yes, that too.
Poor Cliff, he's in a wheelchair now because he's needs to have a hip replacement. He's going through nothing but grief with the medical aggravations.
Well, he
been
definitely
awful.
needs an advocate, somebody who knows how things work, because he's had nothing but roadblocks
Oh,
put up
big time.
against him.
And he's very much attuned to most of these roadblocks. You know, Cliff is not a
He's a smart
neophyte.
guy.
Yeah, he's very smart. So, hey, it's just called the system doesn't always work in your favor.
What it is, if you see somebody like that struggling to get it, it makes you know how hard it can be for some people. That means 3 minutes. That's a gang sign.
See, now when we go to WCNO, our Christian radio at 4 o'clock, they have cards. They have to hold up a card.
We
They
can't
don't use,
afford
they,
the paper.
They assume you can. They assume you can read, Joe.
They assume I can read it. And what he does is he starts hitting me in the head with it.
I
when
like the fingers better.
You like the fingers better? Well, you see, and I
They're
tried
more
to
accurate when he does a half.
I tried
2.5
to teach him
minutes.
down there. I said, look, if you went up and see Greg goes like this, which shows about 1 inch. That means I got a half a minute left.
That's what he thinks of.
I said, what about 15 seconds? Greg says, Joe, you're done.
This is done.
You're done, right? You're out.
Well, we're not done yet. I just want to one more time give a shout out to Bulldog.
Bulldog,
His
yes.
email is Robert Buys BUYS 1004 at Comcast.net.
And that's what he does. He's a veteran, and will help you with what you're entitled to, because he has gone through the system and learned it as well as anybody alive, and he's there to help any veteran that wants to have help, and he doesn't charge a nickel. You go online, and that's it. That's his mission right now. 340-1590, 340-1590. Yeah, well, he said last time we talked, we lost like 35 pounds.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
He's got to be.
And he was
really,
not heavy to
No,
start
he
with.
was not.
So, it's called him and Alex Trebek right now. It's their time in the barrel.
Yeah.
Yeah, what can you do? 340-1590, 340-1590. Remember the group. We got Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, the hardest working realtor known made to life, maybe the hardest working person. Dan Warren, independent insurance agent. Doesn't work nearly as hard as Victoria, but he's much.
He's got his team. He has his team.
But he's got a
nice shot.
You're welcome. But he's got a big team of well-educated, well-trained. And Dan, have they taught you yet?
It's called, I have the right staff that do the right work for me, but I have a huge payroll as a result of that.
No,
and
you
that's
do.
Okay.
You do.
Dan is the premier independent insurance agent on the Treasure Coast, and the reason I say independent and premier means he's got 140 years of experience in only 37 years.
You can only do so much as one person. I can't duplicate myself, so I have to hire people.
There you go.
And that's really hard because I can't hire people. I need clones.
Hey, guess what? Say goodbye, Victoria.
Goodbye, Victoria.
Goodbye, goodbye, Greg. Goodbye, Dan.
Victoria.
And good
Goodbye,
night, John
Victoria.
Boy. Until next week. Bye.
You've been listening to the Team MARTEK Hour. The Team MARTEK Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team MARTEK Hour here on WPSL 1590.
WPSL, Port St. Lucie.